Hello, friends. Welcome to the Best Mom Ever Parenting Teens podcast, your place to get the tools and strategies you need to have a close and trusting relationship with your kids. Thanks for listening. We are glad you're here. Hello, and welcome to the Best Mom Ever podcast. I'm Allison, and we are so glad to have you here and listening today. I have a unique conversation to share with you relative to the other types of content that I put on this podcast. So, from my position as a parenting coach and a mom, I love talking about cultivating deep relationships with our kids, breaking through patterns, creating a world where we have more gentleness toward children and all people, and working through breaking patterns that block our relationship with our kid and creating a deeper type of relationship than we ever thought possible with our amazing, beautiful children and teenagers that's really going to last a lifetime. Okay, so this is what I like to talk about. This is the space that I want to be in. I'm a very peaceful person. And yet the reality is that we're parenting our kids, our teenagers, in a world where they know that there's global conflict happening. They are present. Our kids are present to the suffering of people in other countries that are experiencing war, specifically in Israel and Palestine right now. And again, this is from my vantage point in the United States of America, in North Carolina, in the American South. So because of my position in the world and my, we'll say white privilege, I'll say that I didn't feel like it would be authentic for me to try to tackle this very real, very big subject on my own. So I asked my friend Shireen Kaisar, and she said she agreed to come on and talk about empathy and how we cultivate that in the face of tremendous suffering and conflict, and how we live that in our own lives, and how we teach empathy to our own children, to be kind to their brothers and sisters, especially the ones that aren't always kind to us or the ones that look different from us. So I think she did a really beautiful job of expressing what she wanted to share about empathy and gives specific tools on how to teach this in really tough situations, because our kids are facing a world with their peers that we can't be present with. So kind of arming them with the tools that they need to be successful in this space. So of course, after we finished the recording, we got wrapped up in this amazing conversation that I wish we would have still been recording for, obviously, about how we don't support a war between Israel and Palestine. And it really breaks our hearts that instead of investing in our children here in the United States and our education system, we are funding a war. And that breaks our hearts. So we want to teach our kids empathy because it means more peace in the world. Because when people understand each other, when we see each other in a more positive light as real people, we don't need to fight our brothers. So let's pray for peace. Let's walk in peace. Let's build empathy, create peace in our hearts and our homes. Write your representatives. This is the way forward. So I want to introduce Shireen Kaisar. She is a New York State certified school psychologist working with children and families for over 10 years. She is a certified life coach and works closely with parents, especially mothers, to foster stronger relationships with our children. She conducts workshops and individual trainings to help people regulate behaviors, foster a growth mindset, and empower people to engage in their self-care. Follow her and message her on Instagram to claim your free gift. And be sure to mention this Best Mom Ever podcast for a special opportunity with Shireen. All right, without further ado, welcome the amazing and incredible mom and coach, Shireen Kaisar. Welcome, everyone, to the Best Mom Ever Parenting Teens podcast. I am so excited and honored to share with you Shireen Kaisar. And she is a school psychologist, a personal and parenting coach, and the CEO at Coherent Parenting. Welcome, Shireen. I'm so glad to have you. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much, Allison. This is the second time that we are doing this together, and I'm super excited.
Yes. But back then, I didn't have a podcast.
Yes.
So you're like one of my first guests on my podcast, possibly the very first ever to get published. I've recorded a few, but I haven't gotten them all out. So yours really may be the very first podcast that ever gets has a guest. So it's really cool. So
Thank
thanks.
you. It's an honor. I'll say that.
Same, totally. So when we last connected, you
Mhm.
were going to an interfaith conference for Jewish and Muslim people in the face of the conflict in Gaza that started last year. When I asked you to do this interview, you suggested that we talk about empathy in the face of conflict. What do you want me and others to understand about your experience at that conference?
So I think the most important thing to know is what was my idea behind joining an interfaith organization like that. I joined this organization back in 2016 when I was looking to learn more for myself. And, growing up, one thing that we always heard was like, the closest religion to Muslims was Judaism. And there are so many similarities. In fact, like we always say Jewish cousins, because literally the two tribes were the lineage of the two brothers. So back in 2016, when I joined the Sisterhood of Salam Shalom, what happened was there were a lot of things going on, and I started learning more. And the conflict in Israel Palestine is not new; it has been there since forever. So there was one thing that we never discussed in sisterhood initially was these issues. We would talk about a lot of similarities, not differences. So there were like very strict guidelines around it. So now fast forward to this conference time. I remember when you approached me at that time, I was like personally struggling with a lot of things. I was questioning, where do I stand? Where do my loyalties lie? And now these friends that I made back in 2016, now we are like 7 years friendship long. And
Yeah.
we have developed these relationships that have been beyond just religious similarities. Now we are friends whose children are friends, and we have shared meals together. We have gone to trips together. I went with Sister Islam Shalom to Auschwitz. So I really feel like I have grown to know the trauma that a lot of people talk about, but nobody hears about it. But one thing that I was struggling with, there was always like my conflict with my friends started too. So one of the
Mm.
things that the conference did was my friend and I, we always have this thing that we are very unfiltered. By the way, I got interviewed during the conference by Associated Press, and the article came out too, so I can send it to you.
Amazing. We will link that in the comments.
So one of the things that basically the purpose of this conference was, why is it important to have a dialogue in a peaceful manner instead of saying, but this, but that, but what about this or what about that? So one of the things that in the conference, we also had this presentation from Combatants for Peace, who have their people in Israel and West Bank and like Palestinian territories, and they are working together. So they say that violence is not an option. The only thing that needs to happen is a peaceful dialogue. And I think that is the mission and vision of the sisterhood, that we need the peace in the region. We need ceasefire from all sides. We need people to come to the table and
Mhm.
talk about the similarities like we started, and not think about the someone as the other. So I think
Mhm.
I came back from conference very sick, but I also came back from conference with a new resolution that yes, I'm very upset with what's happening. My
Of
heart
course.
hurts every single day. I see the number of children killed and all, but I will say these Jewish friends that I have made, they do reach out every single time, just like I reached out to them. And we all check in on each other, ask how we are feeling. And I know they're not Israeli government. They know I do not represent a government or a political association. So we know that as people, we have a shared humanity. And yeah, so that conference gave everyone who left that conference left with a new resolution that we need to work towards the peace. And most importantly, we also need to start working on our relationship here in America, where we are all raising children, many are raising grandchildren. We need to figure out how we can work together as women, as women
Hmm.
for peace. And that's what Sisterhood has changed it to now Sisterhood of Salam Shalom, Women for Peace.
Mm, beautiful. I love what you said about not thinking of people as other. And I think that's so central to your idea for our conversation today, which is about empathy and how teaching empathy to our children can help create more peace in the world. And that if we can think of other people as ourselves, then that literally is what empathy is, and it's required in order to have peace.
And Allison, it would have been very easy for me to walk away if I didn't have these people as friends or say like tons of negative things or have so much rage in my
Yeah.
heart if I didn't know these people as my own. So I think the building block of empathy is knowing the other person, having a conversation. Because one of the things that I don't remember where this research was done, but there was something like, during like while I was in school, there was one thing that I read that a lot, like, when they did the research on a lot of people who had racist ideologies,
Hmm.
where was this coming from? It was coming from the fact that they never actually knew the person they were racist against. So, and like one of my very close Jewish friend, like she grew up Orthodox. So we were just sharing like, stories about our racist families. One of the things that we spoke about, she said, someone in her family said, but Muslims always do that. And she said, I told them, have you ever sat down with a Muslim and like spoken to them? And they said, no, I would never. So she said,
Oh.
I told them that I have been with them. We have slept in the same rooms. We have gone to the trips together, and I know them as human beings, which is why I'm very disturbed by what you're saying. And I told her exactly the same scenario. I know people who will just make a sweeping remark about a Jew, and then I will say, wait, hold on. Do you even know like like they are regular people just like us. They don't like, so my friend and I, we don't talk on text messages anymore.
Hmm.
If we have any heavy feeling, we have like, and that's what I'm trying to like bring it all together is empathy means having an understanding. We would meet up at diners, we'll go out for coffee because we know that when we are looking at each other, we both have this strong understanding that nobody's going to be the one hurting the other person.
So I just really have to acknowledge your intentionality about being here and doing this work and making sure that these patterns aren't continued. And that takes a lot of courage. So I thank you so much for literally making the world a better place.
Thank you. No, and I always, I will say, like this is not a special thing. Hard work is being there because throughout these past 7 years, Alice and I have seen many people leaving Sisterhood because some people just could not bear the pain or hurt or anger. And I am a very emotional person and I do go through all those emotions. But one thing that keeps me in this mode is the idea that I am raising kids in this political environment. Any action that I do is going to be a message to them. And I want them to be very, very mindful of how they build connections. And it's not just with one faith. It's with all faiths, with all, we are all human beings first. And I think I really feel like as parents, we owe this to our children to show them that if we are doing something, we are doing it wholeheartedly. And I hope the message doesn't need to be like, like this is an unspoken thing. I hope it gets to them.
Hmm. Yes. And I also wanted to point out when we're talking about the courage that it takes to lead your family in this way, is that it's a scary place to be, to fly in the face of this expectation that this other group is different from us. And it can be really challenging and scary to come against that and to say something different and to show up in a different way than that. So again, I
But
just
can I
really.
also one thing I will say, this is the most effective way. I have said things to my friends that I probably would not have courage to say to a lot of Jews on their faces. My friends have created that space for me to feel comfortable and say, what about this policy? Or why do you think this is happening?
Hmm.
And again, I create the same space when it's their turn,
Mhm.
because I do think we all need to be able to talk in a safe environment and
Mhm.
with our, our vulnerabilities on the table with an intention that our goal is not to hurt the other person's feelings.
So you're talking about literally being able to work through the emotions of the previous beliefs that you held because of your experiences and your upbringing, and being able to to question and to resist and to ask really challenging, tough questions that aren't easy for them to hear in a way that's like, that I'm not genuinely trying to hurt you, but it is really, there's a lot of tough emotions here that I have to work through. It's not simple, it is very complex. And so, wow. Yeah, I'm just kind of like grappling with for myself, like how much courage that actually takes to be in that room and have that conversation.
And funny thing, I once was very upset, so I shared a few things on my stories about Israel and Palestine, like very pro-Palestinian posts. And I messaged my Jewish friend. I said, please do not look at my stories for next 24 hours.
I love
And
you. I don't want to hurt your
and she said, got it. Thank you so much for the heads up. So it's, I mean, yeah. So, I mean, bottom line, we are two mothers, we are two friends, and this is, this is basically giving space to the other person to just be them. I mean, nobody's here to try to change anybody's mind. Like, we don't have to agree on everything. But one thing we all agree on is that we need to take care of each other. We need to see the humanity. And the only way we can bring any change together is if we start small on a micro level. So we are hoping that if we can sit down, have a dialogue, so can the world, hopefully.
Hmm. I believe in you. I think you can do it.
Thank you.
Okay, so during one of our first conversations that we got to record together, you shared about how raising your kids with your own sense of collaboration and autonomy or freedom in itself is a privilege. And for some reason that really stuck with me. Whenever I like think about you, I remember you saying that on one of our first interviews. So is there anything that you would really want to add to that or share about your priorities as a parent as it relates to this topic of creating peace on a micro scale and then letting it expand?
So I remember that conversation very clearly. And I think you actually challenged me on that point. And that stuck with me because now every time I think of it as a privilege, I'm like, I check myself a little that should it really be a privilege that, like, why can't they just be, you know? Because I remember having that back and forth. Now I have two teenagers and then I have a younger one. So with everything that has been happening, and it's been like the conflict is like seeping into our lives on a micro level now. Like it's in schools, children are talking in friend circles, children are social media is something that like, and even if I control TikTok or Instagram, there is always these other chat servers that I don't know about, and the kids are engaging. So one thing that I had this conversation early on with both boys, I set them down and I said, listen, the world is very scary right now. There's a conflict happening and people are dying. And I said, I want you to be very careful with how you use your words because it's so easy to say something mean and the other people will say, good job, yes, you are right. This is how they are. I said, I want you to think, if you see something offensive, look at it and say, are they trying to offend me or are they trying to show me their pain? Or if I say some mean thing, and I'll like, can I be like a little bit more explicit?
Sure.
So, for example, like, when people talk about hostages, so I told him, like, like people would say, what about hostages? So he would say, Mom, but what about children in Gaza who are dying? And I would say, if somebody's talking about hostages, they're not talking about hostages to spite you. They're talking about hostages because they want you to empathize a little bit. So I said, why can't you just say, hey, I am worried about them too. And I said, once you show empathy, it comes back automatically. people will not just move on after your act of kindness. And then at this, on the same level, I also said, and if you do not know what to say or how to respond, please keep quiet, because do not utter a word that can hurt someone else's feelings. So I am not controlling how they use their words or how they use their actions. What my job, I feel like, as a parent at this time, is to guide and, like I said, model what I think needs to be modeled, and then
Hmm.
let them be, because I don't remember anybody teaching me empathy explicitly. I think it was from the actions of my parents, like, around me, and how they dealt with people is what created who I am today. So, yeah, I think, but also, like, I'll add this another thing. I have been very open with the communication, and sometimes I am told by my husband that I'm like too, like, you don't need to say too many things at the same time. You don't need to talk about things that they're not even thinking. But I don't remember discussing everything that came to my mind with my parents. So I feel like as a parent, I'm just covering all the bases. That what if the thought comes, and how will they deal with it? I don't want them to feel that, oh, maybe if I go to mom about it, or like, and like my kids have been talking that, oh, my mother is part of this interfaith organization, and they are, like they believe in peaceful dialogue. They believe in women working together. They do charity work together for the community, with both Muslim and Jewish community. I think gives them an opportunity to also reach out. And I hope that they grow up to be those who reach out to others to create bridges, not, like, not create their own islands.
Amazing. I think that's very wise. And I think what you shared about empathy, and even to be specific in your example for them, kids they're exposed to a lot. Like you explained with all your details about social media and how they're accessing it. But I think that like they're capable of some really big ideas and thoughts, and we don't always give them enough credit for what they are thinking about. And so I think in many ways you not only prepared them for being more peaceful people, but you also gave them a little bit of shelter and protection from what they might experience out there in the world. That when this comes up, instead of responding negatively, like you gave them tools to be able to respond in a powerful way in dialogue with their peers, and then also to diffuse that really intense stuff that probably does come up because
Yeah.
people are looking at your children because they do look different. And so they are thinking them being like, oh, well, these are examples of Muslim people. And, what are they going to do? So I think it was very profound and wise for you to think proactively like that and have that conversation and trust in them to be those peaceful people and to choose the right path when you show it to them.
Absolutely. And another thing, I am actually very lucky that either I'm in a very good school district, or basically I am such a helicopter parent that I like talking to the principals, to the teachers, you know, like, if I suspect that something might happen, I will email them that, hey, just giving you a heads up, something like this might happen. Please keep a lookout. Like, it became so bad that last year during the month of fasting, my son said, please do not email my principal. It's okay. I'll be fine. Nobody needs to take care of me. So they know that.
How old are your boys now?
So one is 17 and the other one is 14.
Okay.
So now with them, I am actually learning to step back. I do not like, I have, like, I'm itching sometimes to contact the guidance counselor that, hey, because I've been asking, hey, something came up in school. Did somebody say anything? Because high schoolers, they do crazy things. And I've been hearing things, that, like, sometimes micro conflicts do arise in the high school. But he has asked me, he said, Mom, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. And I trust him because I know he also knows that sometimes when somebody's not worth the dialogue, he won't engage in it and he'll walk away. And I have told him that, like, because he saw me doing that. Like, there was this someone who I did have a friendship for a long time, and we had to say, I'm sorry, I cannot. Like, she said, like, she wanted me to agree to certain things. And I said, there's no way I would agree to those things. And I said, I think we cannot talk about the conflict of Israel Palestine in a friendly manner. So let's just not have this conversation. And I think that was a very self care strategy that I did. We still talk, but very superficially. But I'm not going to, this is not someone I'm going to have a dialogue with
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
to process my feelings, because
Right.
thank God I do have a safe space with other friends where I can process those feelings.
So important.
And I
Okay,
will add one more thing. I
please.
like, I also have a little one, right? She is in second grade and she's blissfully unaware of everything going on. But I know that not everyone around her is the same. I have been talking about kindness with her a lot lately. And this is someone who has like a heart full of love. Like if somebody is mean to her, she'll say, that person was having a bad day today. Like she won't say that somebody was being mean to her. So one of the things that I have been talking to her, and this is the first time I'm not emailing teachers asking who was mean, because I did that when the boys were younger. I'm saying, like you are a very kind person, and next time if somebody says certain things to you, say thank you so much for your comment. That was not needed. Don't just walk away. And she has started practicing that, and somebody made fun of her hair. So she said, I told a person that my hair looked good to me. Mommy, did I say the right thing or was that a not kind word? And I'm like, you know what? No, that was a good thing to say. And you're being kind to yourself first. So I think one of the things that, especially because since she's a girl, I do like, I mean, I don't like this, like differentiating between girls and boys, but I do feel like as a girl, she needs to have self empathy first.
Hmm.
She needs to love herself more than the love she has for people around her. Because most of the time, especially women, we just get into this people pleasing mode and then we keep doing it until we are too old to realize some people are not worth our efforts.
Mm, so true. And I mean, I think it does, it's reasonable to me to acknowledge that women are still an oppressed gender in our world and that we do need to um, raise our girls in a way that's conscious of that. I think
Mhm.
that's totally legitimate. So I'd like to just kind of circle us back around and bring us to back to our topic about how we choose to parent and teach empathy and be empathetic as human beings and how that creates more peace in the world. How does parenting in a way that honors our children's humanity by like actively avoiding being overly forceful and controlling create more peace in your life and the lives of those that your family interacts with? And you've shared several examples about how that does look in that you're teaching actively how to have those conversations when conflict comes up. But then, yeah, I'm just going to rephrase the question so it's easy for you to answer. How does parenting in a way that honors our children's humanity by avoiding the use of force and control create more peace in your life and the lives of those your family interacts with?
So I'm going to give you a few points for that. I mean, and this basically, like, summarizes the whole conversation. We need to start with self empathy, even as parents. We need to start taking care of ourselves as parents. We are not just parents, we are also our own individual. And then, building block of empathy is trying to understand others around us. And that is a very good friend of mine. He said that when asking a question, always ask out of curiosity, not animosity. And when you do that,
Beautiful.
it gives the other person a window in your heart that they can see that you are coming from a place of love. So that is something that it is so easy to teach children how to ask questions from curiosity. And to do that, we need to ask questions to our children out of curiosity. We cannot say, what were you doing in your room?
Mm,
Like we can ask, hey, I was wondering, is everything okay with you? Was something going on? The child can see the concern in your tone, and the child can also hear the agitation in your tone. We need to give them respect, like we deserve respect. Everyone deserves respect, whether it's, and I remember you talking about your 4-month-old and how, you thought like you even during diaper change, you would have a conversation. And I was like, that is, yes, like even a 4-month-old deserves as much respect as a 40-year-old or 80-year-old. Why not? So trust your children if everything has to be based on the trust. And I'm not saying blindly trusting children. I told you privacy is a privilege in my house. I will, if I need to, and I will always say, listen, for your safety, can I just sit with you and go over your phone? And we'll sit together. I'm not snooping around their back. I'm not opening any notebooks. I'm not opening their devices without asking them. They know that if I look at something, it will be when they are present. So respect, trust has to go hand in hand. And last but not the least, like I really feel like modeling. They need to see us engage in an empathetic way in order to follow our lead. We cannot, and you have worked with children. You know that children will say things and will say, I wonder what's happening at home because we have heard randomest things. And then we just feel like, okay, I know exactly what kind of conversations are happening at home. Children will follow our example more than do what we ask them to do. So yeah.
I love that. Thank you so much for being so specific in how we do build empathy. It made me think of kind of a strategy that I use to try to not get triggered by my son when he is like quote unquote disrespectful or whatever. I'll be like, when did I say that to you? When did I talk to you in that way that you're now talking to me? Like if he turns around and he's like, what? I'm like, oh no. Did I say what to you like that? Like, I need to be more conscientious about the way that I'm interacting with you. Like, whenever I get all that negative energy, I'm like, okay, like, how can I be more empathetic to like not be teaching or modeling this like you're talking about? So really, really beautiful. Thank you
But hey,
for all of that.
I have lost my cool too. I have asked, what were you doing in your room? I have like, barged in and say, hey, I want you downstairs because, kitchen is not going to clean itself. But they also know that I am going to come back. If I feel that I have spoken to them a certain way or made them feel less off, they know that I won't go to sleep without talking to them. I will go back and I'll say, I was really struggling in the kitchen because I had a long day at work. We have to work as a family. And they'll do it. They're beautiful boys. Like, I mean, thank God, like it's never happened that I've asked them to do something and they have said no. They'll complain, but they'll do it. So they know that I'm going to come back with an apology or an explanation why I used a certain tone or why I said something. And I feel like that is a very good thing. And like we didn't get that. I didn't get that growing up. I didn't get any apology. But I still love my parents. And I want them to know that it's okay. Like this is why, like if they do use certain tone, now they will come back and say, Mom, I'm sorry. I used that tone. I was very like, tomorrow is a test and I was just very frustrated. And all good. I want this reciprocity in the relationship.
Okay, I know I said that was the last question, but can I ask you one more?
Yes.
Okay, so how do you like to support yourself when you feel like your own sense of empathy or compassion is depleted or overtaxed?
In what situation?
Well, I said I was only going to ask you one question, so I skipped the one in between, which was
Yeah.
going to be what are the times that your sense of compassion is the most taxed? So I'll give you an example for me, if that makes it easier. So over Christmas, I was very sick, and so I was just generally my body was taxed, and my child is still small. He's almost 5, and so like sometimes he still wakes me up in the night, especially like if we're both sick at the same time. Like he's needing me, and so I'm not getting enough sleep. Plus my body's sick, and then it was the holidays, so my whole family was out of town, so my support system wasn't present. I'm a single mama, so it's just me and him. Thankfully, he finally got this procedure. We had been waiting for like 8 months to go through all the hoops that we needed to do for him to get this like minor surgical procedure completed. And so I was actually keeping him home from school because he was going to have to go under anesthesia. And so I literally had no support system. And he, like, we were starting to really grate on each other. And I was like, where did my empathy go? I have none for this kid. Like, I'm just like angry with him instantly the second that he's being a little bit like attitudey with me. And like he was definitely testing me. And he was also tired of me because we were together so much and we didn't have our support system. Right. And so I had my empathy was just like gone. And I was like, how do I solve this problem? So for me, I ended up like really sitting with it and being like, okay, so what is going on? Like, why, like, asking myself my own coaching questions. Cause like I said, I didn't have my support system around. So it was just me. I was like, well, I have to do a good job with my child. Like, that's the most important thing to me. And so I ended up, I figured out that it really had to do with routine for him. Like, we needed to be more routine because it was holiday and we weren't going through our normal patterns. And so once I was like, okay, so this is what we're going to do today. This is going to happen, then this is going to happen, then this is going to happen. And it just was like, he wasn't fighting me for control anymore because he knew what to expect. And so he was much more comfortable and regulated in his nervous system. And so I'm like really trying to think proactively now, like, what should I be doing? Or like, how can I build my own empathy to do better in the future? Like, not that I'm shaming myself for not having been more empathetic, because it was literally like just not there. Like, I was like, I love my child normally. What is going on with me? Why don't I feel this typical sense of empathy that I normally feel? And I think it had to do, well, I was just completely depleted, right? And so yeah, I guess I was just wanting to kind of, I really want to spotlight you today. And so I was wanting to know what you like to do when you feel like your empathy is kind of tapped out.
So empathy doesn't go away. Our emotional regulation gets disrupted, right? Like empathy would never go away. You still love that child at the end of the day. And while you were talking, I was thinking about the COVID days when we were all in the same home and everyone was trying to work around each other. And one of the things that we did, like we would spend one big chunk of time together, and then each one of us will do our own thing for an hour. And for me, it meant like even if my daughter is sitting next to me working or coloring or playing, I'll pretend that I'm in my own island, in my own zone, because I can't ask her to leave the room because it's going to hurt her feelings. And she was also very tiny at that time. And she would not leave my side. But I will also talk about empathy with in another situation when the conflict was really, really, really terrible. I mean, still terrible, but when it was so fresh, I remember one Jewish friend from Minnesota reaching out to me. And we had like long conversation. And with this person, she is a lovely, lovely, lovely woman. But again, we both like I'm very of course, we both are very religious in our own way. And she said, I want to talk to you about what's happening in Israel and Gaza. And I felt empathetic distress, that terminology where you feel depleted. What you were describing was empathetic distress, there was so much empathy that at one point you just cannot handle. And I messaged her, like I said, I'm saying this with the most love and consideration for you and my relationship, that I need some time. I need at least 48 hours to not engage in any conversation regarding this issue. And Allison, for those 48 hours, I did not read a news article. I stopped looking at my WhatsApp messages where there were a lot of things that were being shared. I stopped looking at Instagram or Facebook. I would only do what was required for me as like I will cook, I'll be with the kids, but no social media around me, because I could feel that because as that is a trauma of an empathetic person, that when we are like empathizing with every side, you cannot function. And that's how I felt. I could not work at work. I could not, like, even while I was driving, I would find myself just crying that I felt helpless. So I think after that 48 hours, the first thing I did, I texted her and I said, I hope we are good. Let me know, like, this is when I can meet. And then we scheduled our phone call. And I felt like taking those kind of breaks helped me to keep the empathy fresh, not feeling like I have just given all of mine to others and I have nothing left for myself. Does that make sense?
That makes so much sense. I love the powerful boundary that you set, right? Like, boundaries really are so loving. It's so easy for people to feel like their feelings get hurt when you set a boundary, but it really is this essential place where we can be loving to ourselves and to others at the same time. Like, because you could not be as loving as she needed at that time. And so you
I would have
had
been
to
very
choose
mean.
yourself.
Yeah, if she would have called me, I would have been very mean. I would have probably said certain things that I would have regretted. And I am, and I think she knew that too. And she told me that. She said, I am so glad that you chose not to talk instead of saying certain things that would have hurt me. So, yeah.
That's such an amazing lesson. Okay, Shireen, please share with us how can people find you that are like really inspired by your message and what you have to share? And would you like to offer some kind of a free gift so that people can have an opportunity to connect with you?
So people can follow me on Instagram. It is PSYCHEDSHIREEN. That's my Instagram handle. I do a free onboarding call for 30 minutes, but now 30 minutes we can just introduce ourselves. So we'll do a free onboarding call for 45 minutes. We'll work on the goal of what we need to work on. And I would also request I do organize women's self-care retreats, and we are going to Morocco in spring break. So anybody who wants to join, uh,
Amazing. That's so
yes,
cool.
yes, and we have a student discount as well. So if you want to learn more about it, please follow me on Moxie Living 21 at Moxie Living but it's MOXIELIVING 21. And yeah, so Morocco retreat is open right now.
And that the Moxie Living, that's on Instagram. That's where
Yep,
they can find you.
Moxie Living 21. Yep.
Okay. So we've got Psyched Shireen and we've got Moxie Living 21 if you want to get to know Shireen Kaisar a little more. Awesome.
So
Well,
much.
it has been such a gift and honor to hear your perspective today. Thank you. Thank you so much. And
This is an honor. I really it's so amazing to be able to share our thought processes so clearly and so in such an open manner. And thank you so much for creating that space.
it's absolutely my pleasure. Thank you again. And have a wonderful night. You guys, you don't know this, but it's totally Friday night. It's uh 8:40 and both of us are coaches and have regular jobs too. So we're like totally fried, but so happy to get together and chat with a friend.
Yes, absolutely. It is like catching up with a friend. Yes.
All right. Bye everyone. Thanks for listening to our podcast. That's it. Hello again, friends. Thank you for listening to the Best Mom Ever Parenting Teens podcast. We know how much it hurts to feel separated from our kids. And we want teens to know just how much love and support is available to them so that they can be successful. If you know that you want to parent with courageous inner calm because it is the best way to create a strong and lasting relationship with our kids and teens, then I have a really special opportunity for you. Pre-registration is free and open now for the 3 keys to restoring trust and connection with your unique teen masterclass series. Master series. Yes. All right. You are going to discover the proven strategies to get out of struggle and into trust, confidence, and happiness with your teen. You're going to learn how to get the conversation with your teen flowing, discover ways you may be sabotaging your relationship, deepen connection with your teen so that you can feel heard and respected, and open up communication so that you can feel confident that you know what is up with your teen. So we can't wait to see you there. We're really excited. It's going to be a lot of fun. Sign up in the show notes. There is a link. All right. See you there.